Sermon 11. The Parable of the Sower. Luke chapter 8 verses 4 to 15. While a large crowd was gathering and people were coming to Jesus from town after town, he told this parable. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path. It was trampled on, and the birds ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground, and when it came up, the plants withered because they had no moisture. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up with it and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil. It came up and yielded a crop 100 times more than was sown. When he said this, he called out, "Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear." His disciples asked him what his parable meant. He said, "The knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of God has been given to you, but to others I speak in parables, so that though seeing they may not see, though hearing they may not understand." This is the meaning of the parable. The seed is the word of God. Those along the path are the ones who hear, and then the devil comes and takes away the word from their hearts, so that they may not believe and be saved. Those on the rocky ground are the ones who receive the word with joy when they hear it, but they have no root. They believe for a while, but in the time of testing they fall away. The seed that fell amongst thorns stands for those who hear, but as they go on their way they are choked by life's worries, riches, and pleasures, and they do not mature. But the seed on good soil stands for those with a noble and good heart, who hear the word, retain it, and by persevering produce a crop. This parable of the sower and the seed, which I once gave my disciples and the people surrounding me, is given in an easily comprehensible form, all the more so as the Gospel also quotes the explanation I then gave to my disciples, but not to the people listening to me. According to this explanation, the seed is my word. Where this falls on the road and is trampled underfoot, it denotes the indifference of those who hear it but disregard it, and, indulging solely in their worldly interests, walk over it. The rocky ground onto which the seed falls describes those hearts which, like the scholars and theologians, accept the seed only as far as it fits into their scientific systems. However, as soon as their opinion differs, this seed on the rocky ground finds only little or no nourishment at all, and must dry up. If the seed falls among the thorns and sprouts together with them, this means that my word is only believed and applied to the extent it is reconcilable with worldly opinions. If it clashes with them, or if my word demands sacrifice and self-abnegation, it is put aside, and therefore also does not bear fruit. Fine words are all it gets, but it does not come to actions. This far I had already explained to my disciples. Now it is of importance how this parable can be applied to the present time, and whether there is not any other important aspect of it. Prior to continuing with this explanation, we have to answer the following questions. What actually is seed? For what purpose is it sown, and what is the sower's aim? Only when these questions have been answered can a true interpretation and explanation through spiritual correspondence follow. For generally, you use a lot of words without being aware of their deeper spiritual significance. Only he who knows the deepest meaning of the words and their spiritual correspondence really knows his language. He has the gift of producing sounds with his mouth, and that can be comprehended in a spiritual sense. And every word that flows from his mouth is a ray of the spiritual light that illuminates his soul, spiritualizes it, and gradually conveys it towards uniting with me. Therefore, there is a great difference between talking and speaking. One may talk a lot and still not say anything, while the important meaning of spiritual speech can mold itself most significantly. So let us begin with the word seed and examine its meaning more closely. Behold, infinity is contained within the seed. From a seed there keep forthcoming products of the same kind to which the seed belongs. Thus it was arranged at the creation of the material world that I created things only once individually. I included within them the germ for further reproduction, so that the initial effect, the evolvement out of itself, would not cease in eternity as long as the elements of the soil and in the air needed for the development of the seed are available. As the seed of a tree carries within it all the nuclei for its future destination, thus my word, which as a product of my spirit keeps producing something new incessantly, never passes but continues forever. Therefore John said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God." I too am the seed out of which continuously and everlastingly only the divine can go forth. Wherever this word falls as a seed, it stimulates the ground to activity, often permanently, often only temporarily. However, since I am also the sower who sows the seed all over the entire creation, it naturally also happens that, as in the parable, not all the seed develops equally. One brings more fruit, the other less, and the third none at all. Firstly, because even the worlds of my creation, together with their dwellers, are not all on the same level, and secondly, because everywhere men have their free will to act in whatever way they see fit. Hence the different spiritual results in all the worlds and with all human beings, and the different lengths of road all created beings have to travel to reach their destination of the spiritualization of their souls. I, as the sower, sow my seed everywhere. Where it is received with indifference, it is the soul's own fault if, due to bitter experiences, they have to go through a harsh schooling. Where my seed falls onto stony hearts, where it cannot stay because the lightest worldly wind blows it away without leaving a trace of it, also there this hardness of heart will gradually be mellowed. Where my seed falls on thorny ground and sprouts together with weeds, it will share the fate of the weeds which have to be destroyed. Then those people will have nothing left but the fallow land of their heart, on which nothing could permanently grow, neither vice nor virtue. Only where my word falls on good ground, where the hearts were already prepared by me beforehand, will the seed of my word be sprouting, flowering, and bearing fruits as an example for others. My word as a seed was and is still daily being sown in order to make true humans out of men, to make them worthy of me, so that, as images of my divine self, they may gradually become that for which I have destined them. Since I walked on earth, I and my chosen have always kept sowing my divine word of love, and because my listeners consisted of different types of people, I intended by this parable to point out his thoughtlessness to one, his indifference to the other, and his worldliness to the third, proving to them what would finally result if my word were only heard but not practiced. What I then said to my listeners and disciples, "He that hath ears to hear, let him hear," I am saying again, for I, as the sower, shall soon come to gather the harvest for my seed. My word, as spiritual seed for everlasting beatitude, is now more than ever trampled underfoot on all the roads and eaten by birds that only want to make use of my word in their own interest. For a long time it has been falling on too stony ground of selfish hearts, where it has to wither without nourishment, and where here or there a stalk flowers, it is standing amid the worldly pleasures, and is being cared for only as long as it is in harmony with the opinions of the world. As soon as it demands sacrifice, it is thrown overboard. Only few keep my word in their hearts, notwithstanding difficulties, struggles, and suffering, tend it with care, and also act according to it. As I once said that many were called to gain for themselves, with the help of the seed of my divine word, a lasting beatitude in the beyond after this short earthly existence, among the many called only few are chosen to receive the palm of victory, which I myself once won through the cross and on the cross as a man. I led the way for mankind as an example, as my life was not distinguished through high birth and other favorable conditions, and I, finally, had to end my earthly life publicly as a criminal on the cross, all those who will follow me will have similar experiences. They too will be persecuted, despised, and ill-treated. But as my resurrection and afterwards my return into my kingdom thwarted all human designs, and I arrived in my heavens spiritualized, thus also those who offered their hearts as good soil for my word will once reap what I have here sown into their hearts. The knowledge that they have suffered, but also conquered, will be their reward. They will receive their reward because they never, like careless wanderers, trampled underfoot the seed of love I had sown on their part. They also did not allow their hearts to harden, nor did they neglect the germinating fruit for the sake of worldly pleasures, which are the thorns for all that is spiritual. As good soil, they shall bear noble fruits. As I once said, ye shall know them by their fruits. Thus the seed has ripened, so that finally the wheat can be separated from the chaff, the thorns and the thistles submitted to purification through a kind of fire, and the ripe corn gathered into my barns. You can already notice everywhere how the sifting is commencing. I shall come to ask people to account for the seed I have sown, and the award will be in accordance with the work. My word is divine seed. It is eternity's sowing for eternity. Whether the seed is ignored, whether it is trampled underfoot, whether it goes up among the thorns, the divine germ remains forever, and one seed is sufficient to produce an abundance of that which is good, and shower it upon the world. Therefore it is of no importance if thousands of these seeds were sown in vain, for those which fell on good soil into hearts full of faith will be spreading the light over those who remain dark. And thus all that will never be destroyed, which I as the Creator have brought forth, which I as Jesus sealed with my death on the cross, and which I shall soon, as a reaper, be gathering from its fields of spiritual activity. Should the harvest also be small, this will still prove that the great never withers or decays if encased in the small. It is capable of producing enormous effects. Therefore, do not allow your hearts to turn to stone, or to be overgrown with weeds and thistles. Keep them at all times ready, so that my word, which reanimates your soul in so many different ways, can sprout therein, so you do not have to share the fate of those who accept my word only superficially, and, when it requires action, prove that the seed had clung only to the surface of their heart, but had not penetrated it at all. Keep this in mind. A sower sows in order to reap one day. The time of harvest is approaching. Be prepared to be gathered into my barns, and not to be compelled to start on the longer road of betterment together with the thorns and thistles. Therefore, who has ears, let him hear, whilst there is still time. Amen. Thank you for listening. To learn more about these sermons and the new revelation, send a blank email to sermons@hisnewword.org. Thanks, and may God richly bless you.